you for clearing up all of the technical issues. Welcome to everybody. Nice to see you out in the open, enjoying the sun, sitting in a very posh-looking library there. That's lovely. Maybe that's just a background. Maybe that's your house. That's gorgeous. Looks like the Hebrew. It looks like the Knesset. You know, whatever. It looks like a law library there, but it's very nice. Welcome again. We are going to be talking about driverless cars, which actually we'll talk about what we're not talking about in a minute. But the issue of driverless cars flags up a whole bunch of other halachic ethical questions that you might think have got nothing to do with it, that we're going to look at, and it's going to take us to so many different areas, this one topic of driverless cars. I think it's going to prove very, very interesting, fascinating in different areas as well. I don't know if you got the sheet in advance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just put it on the group chat in case anybody is interested in just downloading it. Now's probably a good time to do that. So let me just find the sheet for you and put that on now that people are on the chat. Here we are, driverless cars. Driverless cars coming into your Zoom group chat right now. I will obviously share the screen as well. Okay, fine. Let me first of all tell you what I'm not talking about. I once gave this share and a lady came up to me at the end and said, I really was hoping you were going to talk about driverless cars on Shabbos because I want to know if I can use a driverless car on Shabbos. So I'm not really going to talk about driverless cars on Shabbos because there's not much to talk about, is the truth. Because the deal with Shabbos is as follows. You're allowed to use sort of mechanized transport on Shabbos on two conditions. One condition is that you're not doing anything to actually make it go or stop, meaning you're not directly working the pedals or you're not causing it to use more gas, electricity, fuel, whatever it is. So if you're not contributing to that, and number two, the second condition is that what was the second condition? It was just lost in my mind. First condition is you're not contributing to it, and the second condition is that you're part of a much bigger unit, like a boat or something of that nature, and therefore, if you're in a driverless car on Shabbos, you're allowed to take a cruise on Shabbos. You're allowed to actually be on a plane on Shabbos. I'm sure nobody's really been on a plane on Shabbos. But if you were to be on a plane on Shabbos, why would you be on a plane on Shabbos? I'll tell you in a minute. But since the plane, nobody's adding any more fuel to the plane for you specifically, you're not contributing in a direct way to that, you're not flying the plane, if you like, then you can just sit there and do your thing. I'm sure many people have been on a cruise on Shabbos. On a boat on Shabbos, that's not a problem at all. If you're in a car on Shabbos, the problem is going to be that you're either making it go or you're directly contributing. If you're sitting in the back of a car, somebody is driving that car, they have to put their foot on the accelerator because of you, and you're, if you like, making that happen. Therefore, I doubt very much whether driverless cars will be so completely automated to enable you to just sit there and have no effect whatsoever on anything going on around you. First of all, driverless cars will be somewhat driverless and somewhat driven by you, I'm quite sure, when that happens. So that's going to be a problem on Shabbos. But even if it was completely automated, I don't think it's the same as a boat. It's not a situation in which you're one of hundreds and hundreds of people, which is not effectively making any difference to the fuel consumption or the brakes or whatever. And therefore, I suspect the driverless cars on Shabbos are going to be a problem. I can see why, if you have to go to the hospital on Shabbos and you have a choice between driving yourself or going in a driverless car, I can see why that might be better. But I think better still would be to take a taxi, frankly, and get a non-Jewish person to drive you to the hospital on Shabbos. That's probably better still. So I don't see driverless cars having any serious impact on the way we keep Shabbos at any time really going forward. But I may be wrong. Why, by the way, would you end up on a plane, on an aeroplane on Shabbos? This might happen to you inadvertently. How so? Because if you take a flight from the Far East to America on a Friday morning, you take off on Friday morning and you fly into Shabbos. So it's Friday night and you're sitting on the plane and it's Shabbos. So you can sit there singing Shalom Aleichem or whatever and doing your Shabbos thing. And then an hour or two later, you pass over the international date line back into Thursday night. and you land in America on Friday morning America time, and you just spent 2 or 3 hours of Shabbos on the plane before you went back into Thursday night again. This is a real scenario. People actually sometimes need to take that flight, and there's all sorts of interesting questions as to, what does that mean? Are you allowed to, do you have to keep Shabbos? Do you not keep Shabbos? Do you make Kiddush? Do you make Havdalah? What do you do on the plane? I'm not getting into that now. It's not for today. But that's how you might end up on a plane on Shabbos, perhaps without intending to be. But if that ever happens to you, then speak to your local Orthodox rabbi, and they will come with you to Bangkok and help you work through the Shabbos issues. Okay, fine. So I don't think Shabbos is going to be a big issue for driverless cars. I don't think you'll be able to take them under normal circumstances. Again, for illness, sickness, different. But the real issue with driverless cars is the moral dilemma. And that's where all of the excitement comes. Meaning what? I'm sure everybody on this chat drives. And if, God forbid, you're in an emergency situation where you have to make a split-second decision, somebody runs out into the road, a child runs out into the road in front of you, and you can't stop in time, and you have to swerve. What are you going to do? Are you going to swerve into some kind of a concrete block and thereby risk, God forbid, killing all the people in the car? Are you going to just carry on into the person who ran into the road? Are you going to swerve in the other direction potentially into a larger group of people? What are you going to do? So most of us are not really trained for this. And if, God forbid, that happens when you're driving a car, you'll probably just do the first thing that instinct tells you, which may or may not be the right thing. With driverless cars, people have to think of all these scenarios in advance, and they have to program the car. Meaning somebody has to program this driverless car to say, if somebody runs into the road in front of the car, will you do A? Will you just keep going and run them over? Will you swerve and kill the people in the car? Will you swerve into a crowd of people on the other side of the road? What takes precedence? Should one life be sacrificed to save multiple lives? What if the driverless car is so sophisticated, it can actually tell the age of the people? What if it's one child versus 3 elderly people? Is there any difference? And by the way, when people have asked scruples questions and survey questions in society generally, in Sweden, for example, they felt that a 10-year-old child is worth 4.6 70-year-olds. So you can understand why people might feel that way, but does that have any moral standing? Or is that just people, clutching at straws to work out what to do? What about utilitarianism? Do you favor saving more lives over less lives? What if it's a motorcyclist? Do you turn around and say, well, the fact that he gets on a motorbike, he's basically put his own life at risk, and therefore why should I endanger other people just to save him? He shouldn't be riding a bike in the first place. How do you work these things out in advance? That's the real issue. And what if you're given a choice when you buy your car, when you walk in to buy your driverless car, and they say to you, well, sir, we have a number of different modes for you. You can either put it on martyrdom mode and sacrifice yourself to save other people, or you can set it for something. I'm being a little bit flippant, but we might have to address these issues. And now that they're driving, I don't know how many years from now driverless cars are going to be on the road. My guess is 10. There'll be cars that are largely, meaning even my car, I have a hybrid Hyundai car, okay? And it can frankly drive itself quite well. If you take you're not really meant to, but if you take your hands off the wheel, it just goes forward and it moves. It moves around the lanes and it keeps on the road and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's going to be that long in coming. So what I want to do with you is look through some of the classic sources. There are similar ethical questions posed about the plane crash dilemmas. If a plane is out of control and the pilot is heading into a populous area, densely populated city center, and he can't avoid the crash, should he purposely turn into a lesser populated area and kill those innocent people, but not kill a larger number of innocent people? Is that what the pilot should do? Okay, and actually, I don't know if anyone of your pilots, I don't know what they train pilots, what do they tell them to do in these situations? And then, of course, the classic 9/11 scenario is that should we shoot down a plane which has been hijacked by terrorists, thereby killing all the people on the plane in order to stop it from flying into a building or flying into a populated area. And this actually happened on 9/11. Dick Cheney, who was the vice president at the time, if you remember, actually gave an order for the American Air Force to shoot down the last plane that was still in the sky after they realized that the planes were flying into the Pentagon and into the Twin Towers, etc. In the end, that didn't happen because the people on the plane crashed the plane themselves and stopped it from flying into the White House. But these are real scenarios. So what I want to do with you is I want to look at a few halachic sources, which will give us, and at each stage of the game, I want you to think to yourself, how would this apply to a driverless car? How would this impact on the ethical question of who am I going to run down? Myself, other people, more people, less people. So let's have a look at some classic sources and see how this works. I'd like to, someone said here they can't see the link to the share notes. Did everybody else get it on the group chat? Did you see it? You did not see it. That's very surprising. Did anybody get it on the group chat?
Yeah, I think those who joined after you posted it couldn't see it. But you can share it. They'll see it when you share it anyway.
It's all right. The moral of the story is I'll share it again. Okay, there we are. So for anyone who came later due to technical hitches, I've just put it on again. So if you can't see it now, then we'll have to manage with the screen share. Okay, which I'm going to do right now anyway. Fine. So let's have a look with your permission. I'd like to start off with some of the sources. There's far more to say about it than just this, but let's look at the basic parameters. Number one, the Pasuk in Vayikra. There is a mitzvah to try and save lives. This applies to your life, other people's lives. That mitzvah is called Lo samod al dam re'echa. Do not stand by while the blood of others is in danger. The full pasuk goes, Lo selich rachel be'amecha. Don't spread gossip about other people. And Lo samod al dam re'echa ni Hashem. That means that the Torah actually gives people a direct obligation to try and involve themselves in doing whatever they can to save life. And that might include, we'll see right now, killing people in order to save other people. Let's see how that works. Number two. Says the Rambam, if you have the ability to save life and you don't, either you are doing the prohibition in the Torah, you are breaking the prohibition, which by the way is interesting. In English law, if you're walking past a river and there's somebody drowning, screaming for help, as far as I'm aware, I mean, I've been out of the law for a while now, as far as I'm aware, you do not have an obligation to jump in and save them, okay? Obviously, if you're a lifeguard, you do, because that's you taking on a duty of care to save people. But if you're just a bystander and somebody's drowning in the river shouting, help, 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 you do not have an obligation to save them, okay, in English law. In Jewish law, you do. Certainly when it comes to Jewish people, which we regard as family members in a very real sense, you would have an obligation to jump in and save that person. Says the Rambam, if you don't do that, you're breaking the mitzvah. Here we are right now. If you see another person drowning in the sea, or listing by malav, or you see bandits chasing after somebody, or chayara ba'alav, or an animal chasing somebody, and you have the ability to save them, you must do so. Or any cases like this, if you don't do it, you're breaking this mitzvah. And then he gets into the case of the roidef. Now we have to define this carefully. Haraya roidef. If you see someone pursuing somebody else, someone chasing somebody else to try and kill them, laharga. Or or someone to, God forbid, rape them. There was a rapist and he's about to attack a victim. And you could save the person. And you don't save them, even if the only way you can save them is by killing the pursuer or killing the rapist. Okay, you have a mitzvah to do that in order to save the victim. And therefore, you see from here a very interesting thing, which is that saving life is an absolute mitzvah in the Torah. It's not absolute in the sense it takes priority over everything, but it will even allow a person to kill another person in order to save the victim. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to work out who is a roidef. Could you be an innocent roidef? What if there's somebody who doesn't realize they're about to kill somebody else? Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you're walking through the forest and you see someone with a gun who is shooting animals, a hunter, and you see trained his gun on a deer, but you realize to your horror that he's actually about to shoot a human being wearing antlers. They're out on a stag night or something like that, or they're wandering around in the forest. It's a fancy dress party, and you see that there's a hunter about to kill an innocent person, but the hunter's also innocent. The hunter also doesn't realize. Do you have an obligation to jump in and kill the hunter to stop him from killing this innocent person, even though both of them are innocent, or not? Okay. What if one of them is a child? What if there's a child who inadvertently is about to do something which is going to kill other people? Do you have to kill the child even though the child is completely oblivious? We'll see in a minute, this has an impact on abortion as well. We'll see how that works with abortion soon. But the concept of roidef is very central, and we're going to need to define it. Therefore, saving life is critical. Why? Because all of us ultimately, all people come from Adam Harishon, and in theory, all life is infinite. Look at number 3. The Mishnah says, "Lefikach nivra Adam Yechidi." Why was a person created alone? Why was there only one person created in the story of creation? The truth is, there are 2 stories of creation. The first time round, Adam and Chava created together. Only the second time, Adam is created alone. But man was created alone. To teach you, if you kill one person, as if you killed the whole world. And if you manage to save somebody, meaning one life, even one life is infinite. So in theory, is there any difference between one life and 5 lives? Would you steer into one person to avoid killing 5 people? Or do you turn around and say life is infinite and taking one life is actually no better? It's as bad as taking 5 lives. And maybe the thing to do, by the way, in your car, if this, God forbid, is happening, is just hands off. Just say, keep going. Don't swerve in any direction, because better to be inactive than to actually actively take one life, even to save 5. We'll see if that works. But what have we seen so far? There is a mitzvah to save life, and life is, in a very significant sense, infinite. And therefore, the Torah is very clear, the Gemara is very clear, that you can't kill one person to save another. You may never take a life to save a life. We'll see why right now. This actually comes up in abortion. Let me ask you a question. Are you allowed, what is the Jewish position on abortion? Are you allowed to kill an embryo, and under what circumstances? Someone give me an easy answer to that question. Let me put it another way. Under what circumstances can you or must you kill an embryo?
If it would kill the mother.
Right. So that it's in order to save the life of the mother. But the question is, why is that? How come you're allowed to kill one life in order to save another life? You, normally speaking, can't kill one person to save another. So if you look at number 4, says the Mishnah, Ha'isha shehi maksha leilet, a woman who is having terrible difficulties giving birth, and there's a lot of danger going on here. Mechatchem et havlad, we are obligated to kill the child, even though it's about to come out, it's a fully developed fetus. We kill the fetus, b'mayeha, in her stomach. We even, we'll bring it out even bit by bit. We will kill the fetus. We're obligated to kill the fetus. 1 second, I just had to unshare my screen for a second. Because her life takes precedence over the life of the fetus. However, and here's the key for our purposes, yatsa rubai, if the majority of the fetus came out, the baby is already born, halachically, which means that if it's head first, the majority of the head came out, or body first, the majority of the body came out, you may not touch the baby. Once the baby's already born, even if it's still lodged inside the mother and there's danger, you can't kill the baby now, because the baby's born. We never kill one person to save another. It doesn't matter what their respective quality of life is. If you need an organ donor desperately, and there's a young adult who needs the organ to live a long and happy life, and there's an old person who's a perfect match, you may not shoot the old person and take their organ and give them to the young person. I mean, it seems obvious, no? But the question is, why not? One person has only weeks to live, the other person has a whole life ahead of them. We never take a life to save a life. That's fundamental. So why can you kill the embryo? So we're not giving a shir about abortion now, but it seems that you can kill the embryo for either one of 2 reasons or a combination. Either because an embryo is not yet fully alive, we'll see why that is right now, or because the embryo in this situation may be like a roidef, maybe actually in some way chasing the mother or unintentionally causing the death of the mother, and therefore we can classify one as a roidef. But we're not giving a share about abortion right now. But one thing's for sure, we're not Catholics. We do not believe that it will be murder to kill an embryo in order to save the life of the mother. Other circumstances for abortion, okay, that's a discussion. Under what other circumstances could you terminate a pregnancy? What if there's fetal abnormality? What if it's the health of the mother, etc.? Not getting into that right now. Why can't you take a life to save a life? So the Gemara says in number 5, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon Nimnu v'gamru ba'aliyat beit nitza belod. Normally speaking, everything overrides danger to life. Everything is overridden by danger to life. If there's any danger to life, you can break any mitzvah. What did they decide? Kol aveirusha b'Torah. Any prohibition in the Torah. Im oimrim la'adam. If a person would say to them, avor v'al tarog, someone sticks a gun to someone's head and says, break Shabbos or I'll kill you. Ya'avor v'al yarek. They have to break Shabbos. Life comes first. V'chai b'hem. You break Shabbos rather than lose a life. You eat treif food rather than lose a life. Everybody knows that. Chutz, apart from the big 3, avodah zarah, gilui arayis, v'shvichas dam. Idolatry, immorality, which I'm not getting into the definition now, and murder do not override life. Why not? Why doesn't murder override life? Why can't you take a shorter life to save a longer life? So the Gemara says here, shvichas damim gufim inam. How do I know you can't kill people to save people? Svarahu, it makes perfect sense. This is very interesting, by the way. The Gemara doesn't learn it from a verse in the Torah. The Gemara learns it from logic. There is a logic here. Logic is very powerful in halachic thought. What is the logic? Someone asked this question to Rava in the Gemara, one of the Amoraim. Amalei said to him, Maridura Amalei, what if a bandit, what if a murderer comes to me and says to me, Zil katle leploini, you must kill this other person. Ve'ilai, and if you don't kill them, katlina lach, I'm going to kill you, meaning kill them or I'll kill you. What should you do? Amalei, so he replied to him, likatluch, you must die, v'loi tiktal, and you may not kill. A person may not save their life by killing somebody else. Why? And here's the logic. Why is your blood redder than their blood? Dilma dama dahahu gavra sumuk. Maybe their blood is redder than your blood. This is obviously the way that the Gemara is saying is, how can you ever weigh one life against another life? Whose life is worth more? Once 2 people are alive, their life is infinite, and you cannot ever kill in order to save your life. You can break Shabbos, you can eat treif, you can do any other mitzvah pretty much in the Torah, you can break any other mitzvah, but you can never kill in order to save a life. Now, does that apply to everybody? Is there anybody that you can really genuinely say, no, actually their blood is less red than mine. I am more alive than they are, and therefore that idea doesn't apply. Let me give you the following scenario. This was a true case that was put to a rabbi in the First World War. A Jewish girl was raped by a German soldier. This is the First World War, so it wasn't the time of the Holocaust. But during the First World War, a Jewish girl was raped by a German soldier and became pregnant. The German soldier was going to get into a lot of trouble over this, and therefore took a Jewish doctor and stuck a gun to his head and said to him, if you don't abort this fetus, I'm going to kill you. So what should the doctor do? Should the doctor perform the abortion? Or should the doctor say, look, I can't measure one life against another life. I can't kill this fetus in order to save my own life. He certainly couldn't kill someone else to save his own life. Can he kill the fetus to save his own life? What do you think? Yes or no? Perform an abortion to save your own life. Yes or no? Moral scruple question number 3. No?
Yes.
Yes? Who else thinks yes? No? So the answer to that question actually was yes, because in the case of the fetus, it might indeed be possible to say that this fetus is less alive than me. Meaning, I can't say that someone down the road is less alive than me, because the quality of life is irrelevant. Once you're alive, you're alive. It doesn't matter if you're a healthy 15-year-old or a very unhealthy 105-year-old. Life is life. But a fetus is not yet alive, not yet fully alive. So maybe you could say that. Anyway, that's just a side issue. But in print, yes,
Is there any distinction on how old the fetus is, how many months, or is there none in Judaism?
A little bit, meaning until the fetus is born, meaning halachically born means the majority of the fetus has emerged. Either the majority of the head, if it's a normal birth, or the majority of the body, if it's a breech birth. Until that point, the fetus, Rashi says, lav nefesh, is not really fully alive. That's why you can kill it, must kill it, to save the mother. The minute it's born, then it is alive, and you can't do anything to it. A fetus before 40 days gestation, the Gemara says, is actually even less than a regular fetus. It's maya ba'alma. All it is it's just fluid. It's just bodily fluid, and therefore the Gemara says it's not zero. You can't just ignore it and get rid of it for all purposes. But you can. There are more reasons that you would. There were more situations in which you might be able to terminate a pregnancy very early on. Anyway, that's not for now. Okay, fine. So one life versus many lives. One life versus one life, rather. There's nothing you can do. You can't set a life against another life. But what if it's many lives? So let's have a look here. The Gemara brings this in a very interesting situation. Look at number 7. I've shared the screen. Look at number 7, and then we'll get into this whole issue of Sheva ben Bichri. And again, at every stage, I want to try and plug this in. How is this going to work with the moral arguments of driverless cars? And here what we're really asking is, should I steer into one person to save 15 people? That's really what I'm asking here. How are we going to do this? So have a look at number 7. It says the Mishnah as follows. Let's say women were abducted, and the city was besieged. And the people who came to besiege the city say, Tnu achat michem, give us one woman, the nitma, and we will rape that woman. Ve'im lav, and if you don't do that, hariyanu mutamim et kulcham, will come and rape everybody. Hand over somebody to save the rest of you. Are they allowed to do that? And we'll see soon in the case of a murder as well, if they say to you, you have to hand over one person to be killed, and then we will save you, or the rest of them. He'll be killed and you'll live. But if you don't hand him over, we'll kill everybody. Tragically, this happened in the Holocaust a number of times, where the Nazis came along and they said to people, we want you to give over 1 or 2 or 3 people. They're going to be killed, they're going to be murdered, and you'll all be safe. But if you don't hand them over, we'll come and kill everybody. Are they allowed to hand people over? Says the Gemara here, the Mishnah, Yit'amo et kulam. They all have to be raped, God forbid. They can't hand anybody over. You can't specify and hand somebody over. Where do they get this from? Where do they learn this from? So there's a fascinating story in Tanakh, in Shmuel Bet, which you may be familiar with, the story of Sheva ben Bichri. Who was Sheva ben Bichri? So David HaMelech, of course, was from the tribe of Yehuda. And the previous king, Shaul, was from the tribe of Binyamin. And the people from the tribe of Binyamin never really accepted David HaMelech. They felt that Shaul, the King Saul, really was the rightful king. And David HaMelech was a usurper on a certain level. And it took him an awfully long time to convince people from the tribe of Binyamin that David HaMelech really was, King David really was the appropriate king. And therefore we pick up the story, I put it in English here because it's a bit quicker, in Shmuel Bet chapter 20. Look in number 8. There chanced to be a base man who was named Sheva ben Bichri from the tribe of Benjamin. He blew a shofar and he declared, we have no portion of David, neither do we have any inheritance of the son of Jesse, each man to his tent, so Israel. Meaning we reject the king. King David is no longer our king. It's a rebellion. Yoav, who was David's main general, Yoav's men went after him with archers and slingers and all the warriors, and they went out to Yerushalayim to pursue Sheva ben Bichri. So there's a chase going on. And David's men are chasing Sheva ben Bichri. And they came and they besieged him in Avel of Bet Macha. They came to this Jewish town, and he was holed up, hiding in the town. And they spilled dirt to form a mound against the city, and it stood with only its inner wall. They broke through to the inner wall, and they're besieging the city. Again, Jews besieging a Jewish city in order to get Sheva ben Bichri out, so that he can be put up for trial. And all the people that were with Yoav were battering to throw down the wall. Fine. Now, who saved the day? A wise woman. Okay? A wise woman called out from within the city. And Isha Chachama, very famous in Tanakh. The men couldn't work out how to resolve the issue. a wise woman came out. And she said, listen, I'm asking you, Yoav, come closer here so that I can speak to you. He came near her, and the woman said, are you Yoav? And he said, I am. And she said to him, listen to the words of your handmaid. And he said, I'm listening. So let's parley. And she spoke to him, saying, surely they should have come first to hear what they have to say. Had they inquired of the people of this town, Avel, we would have made peace. Meaning, why are you just attacking us? I am of those people who are peaceful and faithful to Israel. What have you got against me? I have nothing against David HaMelech. Why then did you seek to destroy a city and the mother in Israel? Why are you trying to destroy our city? Why should you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? And Yoav answered, God forbid, far be it, he says, for me that I should swallow up or I should destroy. It's not so. But a man in the hills of Ephraim called Sheva ben Bichri has lifted his hand against King David. Says Yoav to the city, give us him alone and I will depart from the city. Meaning, if you hand him over, I'll leave you in peace. The woman said to Yoav, his head shall be thrown to you over the wall. We'll throw you his head. And the woman came all to the people in her wisdom, and they cut off the head of Sheva ben Bichri and they threw it over to Yoav. And he blew the shofar, and they dispersed from the city, every man to his tents, and Yoav returned to Yerushalayim to the king. Okay, they handed over Sheva ben Bichri, and they killed him. And then he left the town. Was this the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? They handed someone over to save their own lives. So the Gemara then picks this up. And you have to understand the story of Sheva ben Bichri to understand what the Gemara is going to say now. It's actually Tosefta, looking number 9. Sir Shal Bnei Adam, if a group of people come to kill others, Sha'amru lahem goyim, and the non-Jews say to them, Tnu lanu echad mikem v'nargenu. Give us a person, hand over a person, any person, and we'll kill them, like a random person, and we'll kill them. Ve'im lav, and if not, hari anu horgim et kulchem. If not, we're going to kill you all. Meaning, pick a person randomly, hand them over, and they'll die, and you'll survive. So what should they do? Yahargu kulam, they should all die, says the halacha here, says the Sefta. Al yimshram nefesh achad miYisrael. Just like the case of the rape, they may not hand somebody over to save their skin. They must all die. Aval im yichduhu, but if they specified, if so, and this is important here, if the person is not random, but there's a reason why they're specified. They said, Sheva ben Bichri. They said, hand over Sheva ben Bichri. Hand over that man. They go to the town and they say, this is the person we want, hand them over. Then they can give them over. That's fascinating. If they specified, if the people coming to attack them specified someone, they're allowed to hand him over. If they didn't specify, they're not allowed to hand him over. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda, then Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. I'm not getting into all of the details here, but that's basically the debate here. And the halacha is ruled in that way. The halacha is ruled that if the people come to the town and specify, then you can hand them over. But if they don't specify, then you cannot weigh one life against another, even one life against many lives. What does it help if they've specified them? So the deal is like this. If they specified them, it's a little bit like their dead man walking. They're kind of double dead. Why? Because if they specify them and say, we're going to kill this person, and if you don't hand him over, we're going to kill you all, then kind of this one individual is dead on 2 counts. He's either dead because they're going to kill him, or they're dead because they're going to kill everybody. So it's not quite the same as taking someone who is just a random person and handing them over. And therefore, the halacha is fairly clear there that if you're going to sacrifice one to save many, there has to be some way in which this person somehow is singled out and is different from the other people. If you're just randomly picking them, then that's not going to work. So how does that work? How does that work in the case of the car? If a car is driving down the road and I need to program it in advance to swerve one way or the other, is it legitimate, based on what we've learned so far, to program the car to kill one innocent person rather than save 6 innocent people? Is that an okay thing to do?
No, sure.
No, it's not. Because there are a number of reasons why it's not an okay thing to do. Reason number 1 is because this individual that you're looking to hand over, as it were, to kill, this innocent person walking down the pavement who you're going to swerve into, has not in any way been identified as a person who should just be handed over. You're just a random person walking down the street. You can't hand over one random person to be killed to save another group to be killed. That's reason number one, that it's not okay. And reason number two, and this is the critical reason, is in the case of Sheva ben Bichri, you're not killing anybody. You're just handing him over. And it's up to them whether they kill him or not. Maybe they'll change their mind. Maybe they'll say, we were just joking. We wanted to see what you were going to do. Maybe they'll say, we like the guy. We've decided not to kill him. But when you're swerving the car or you're programming the car to swerve, that's not the same as you handing over somebody else. That's you programming your car to kill somebody in order to save other people. So I'm afraid that's not going to work. We're not going to be able to program the car to swerve into one person. And certainly it's not going to make any difference whether the person is old or young. You can't save one young person or six young people by killing one old person. It doesn't make any difference whether they're young or old. They're all innocent people. And there is no rodef here. That's an interesting thing. The only person who is a rodef, the only person you might be able to kill, by the way, is yourself, I suppose. We're going to come to that in a minute. Are you allowed to sacrifice yourself? Because you're the one that's chasing after everybody. You're the one in the car that's kind of out of control, having to swerve one way or another. So that's an interesting point, but I don't think so far we found anything that is going to help. Okay, let's get on to the next level. The Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was asked a question. Who was the Chazon Ish? Rav Avram Yishai Kareretz, who lived in Israel in the 1940s, 50s. This is a true case. It's written up by somebody who was sitting with the Chazon Ish when somebody asked him this question. A bus driver from Haifa, a taxi driver, from Haifa, came along and said that they gave the following case. He asked the Chazon Ish the following. He was driving down the hill in Haifa. Now, if anyone's ever been to Haifa, it's pretty hilly, okay? Very steep hills. He was driving down the hill in Haifa and his brakes failed and his cab was careering towards a crowd of people. And he steered it out of the way. He couldn't do anything about the brakes. He steered it out of the way into one person and killed them. And he felt terribly, terribly guilty about this and wanted to know, had he done the right thing or had he done the wrong thing? And he went to the Chazon Ish and asked him, did I do the right thing or did I do the wrong thing? So the Chazon Ish said, well, on the one hand, he asked the following question in a similar way. If there's a missile heading towards a town and you have the ability to divert the missile into, it's the same question basically, or the plane or whatever, into a smaller town and kill less people, is that okay or is that not okay? So on the one hand, says the Chazon Ish, it's worse to divert the missile because then you're actively targeting these people, whereas at the moment it's just heading towards the town. You're just passive. Okay, we'll deal with the trolley problem in a minute. But on the other side, said the Chazon Ish, it may be that you are. Maybe it said to this cab driver, you did do the right thing. Why? Because what you did wasn't an act of killing, it was an act of saving, which is a fascinating idea, which may impact on what we're doing and help us a little bit with our driverless car. By driving, it's completely different, he said, to the whole concept of handing over a person to be killed. On the one hand, it's worse because you're doing the killing yourself. On the other hand, you're not killing to kill. You're killing to save. It's an act of hatzalah. It's not an act of murder. And he wanted to therefore argue, and he said, I assume he also wanted to help this cab driver feel better about life as well, that he said it could be that was the right thing to do. Other people, by the way, disagree. That Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, was absolutely against this. He said, the only thing you can do if the brakes fail in the car is do nothing. Because if you're going to kill somebody actively, that is clearly worse than trying to minimize the number of casualties. Better to just do nothing because you didn't create this problem, therefore you can't contribute to it. That's a little bit like the classic case of the trolleys. You know, this even became got a name for it, trolleyology. You know what I'm talking about? Let me show you on the sheet. I brought you the case at the back here, the trolley problems. They're really quite famous. And these are the issues that the Gemara is discussing. So there was a British philosopher from Oxford called Philippa Foot, and she posed in 1967 the trolley problem. You know what the problem is. There's a trolley, there's a big tram careering down the tracks, okay? And you realize it's heading towards 5 people. And you can pull the points on the train and divert the train into another track on which there's one person tied down? Should you divert the train onto the one person in order to save the 5 people? And obviously, there's no one easy answer to that question. Do you use a utilitarian methodology and say, well, better to save 5 people than better to save more people and kill less people? Do you say better to do nothing at all, etc.? So in this basic situation, the Chazon Ish said it could be that actually you should divert the train because you're saving the 5 people. You're not killing the one person. And then, of course, there are the variations on this. So rather unpolitically correctly called the fat man variation. I don't think you could call it that today. I think this was from the 1970s where people were a bit less politically correct. What's the fat man variation? Rather than diverting the train, you can push a very fat man off the bridge in front of the trolley, and that will save the 5 people. But in this case, you're actually pushing the guy off rather than just diverting the trolley onto a different track. Is that worse because you're pushing the guy off, or are you still saving 5 people by causing the death of one person? And then there are other variations. What if the fat guy on the bridge was the one that started the trolley moving in the first place? Does that make it different? Because he's kind of guilty. That's called the fat villain variation. Or does it make no difference? You're not there to be the executioner of this guy just because he happened to set a trolley in, etc., etc. And the many, 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 many variations on that. So the one thing that might help us, as I was saying, is this Chazon Ish. If you follow this Chazon Ish, where he says maybe that to kill less people is actually an act of Hatzalah. It's an act of saving rather than an act of killing. Okay, maybe that'll help us program our car in that way. But a lot of other people were very, unhappy about it and would say, no, you have to program the car to just go forward. What happens if you're a very altruistic kind of person and you want to give up your life to save the lives of many? Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to voluntarily give up your life to save other people's lives? The situation of the terrible case of Roy Klein during the last Lebanon war, where they were in Lebanon in the Israeli army, and a grenade came into the building, and him and his soldiers and his men were all in the building, and he saw the grenade, he screamed Shema Yisrael, jumped on top of the grenade, took the blast of the grenade into his own body, saved everybody else in the room. He was still conscious enough when, after that to radio in and say, send reinforcements or whatever. Was that the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, a mitzvah but not required, an amazing mitzvah, an obligation? So again, in your particular case, could you say to the car manufacturer, look, I don't want to kill anybody. In the event that there is a conflict between killing other people and the passengers, I want the passengers to die. The question is, that's all very well, but what if you're giving the neighbor's kids a ride home from school? Do you have the right to declare that they're also going to be the ones programmed that's going to prioritize killing them? So have a look at this Gemara. This Gemara is fascinating for 3 or 4 reasons, some of which we've talked about, but one of which we haven't at all, which I think you'll find very interesting. Look at this number 13. Everyone look with me, number 13. There's a Gemara in Tanis. Kashebikesh Turianus, Trajan. When Trajan was oppressing the Jewish people during the Roman period, 2nd century CE, Laharog et Luninus Upapus. Luninus Upapus were taken aside to be killed. Echav, 2 brothers, Beludkia. Rashi explains actually that the governor's daughter had died, and the Jews were all accused. It was a blood libel. The Jews were accused of killing her, and Papias and Lulinus were volunteered and said, "We did it. You can kill us. It wasn't anybody," and they hadn't done it at all. No, none of the Jews had done it in the town, but they gave themselves up. What's the story here? So look what the Gemara says. The Trajan said to them, if you are really Jewish and you come from the line of the 3, remember the 3 friends in Daniel, in Sefer Daniel, that were thrown in the lion's den, and there was a mitzvah, and there was a miracle rather, and they were saved, okay? If you're from that nation, Yavo Elokeichem, may your God come, v'yatzel etchem. God will save you. If you're really righteous, God will save you. miyadai, from me. So he taunted them and he said to them, okay, so if you're so righteous, there'll be a miracle. Look what they said to him. Amrullah, they said to him, these are the people in Tanakh, they were righteous. They were worthy of having a miracle done. The Nebuchadnezzar, fascinating point. Nebuchadnezzar Melech Hagonhaya. Nebuchadnezzar was he was a wicked king, but he was a worthy wicked king. And he was worthy of a miracle being done through him. But you, they said to him, Hedyot, you're an idiot, basically. Hedyot, you're just a regular person. You're not worthy of a miracle being done. And then they make an interesting point. And the fact that you're going to kill us obviously means that God wants us dead. And if you don't kill us, God has many other ways of killing us. There are bears, there are lions. Very interesting point. They gave themselves up, and appropriately so, to save the lives of other people, other innocent people. And this was considered to be appropriate. Your life, in that sense, is yours to give up in this way to save others. So it may be appropriate to have something programmed into the car to say that I want in the event, God forbid, of any danger, I want to be the one that takes the knock rather than other people. By the way, this point that they made at the end, I just want to raise an interesting hashkafa issue, which you might want to go away and think about. We believe that God runs the world, but to what extent does God run the world? Is it micromanaged or is it macromanaged? And also, when other people exercise their own free will, this is itself a fascinating question. When other people exercise their own free will, is that God working through them, or they do that of their own accord? Again, let me phrase the question in a different way. If somebody commits a willful act of violence against somebody else, and God forbid kills them, do we say that that was meant to happen? Or do we say that no, God doesn't run other people's free choices? That person was not meant to die. Okay, that person was not meant to die, and the other person exercised their free will and killed them. And now that they did that, then God will reorganize the world in a way which is appropriate. Or do we turn around and say that God works through people even through their own free choices? There's a whole debate about this. And here in this particular source, it sounds very much from this source that they understood that this individual Roman was just an agent, if you like. He was an agent of God in the world, just like a lion or a tiger or a disaster or whatever. And he felt that God does work through other people's free choice. But that's a very, very big question, and actually a very important question, and a key question when addressing the issue of, the Holocaust. Obviously, you can't come to a glib or easy solution as to questions like where was God in the Holocaust, but you could argue, well, why are you asking that question? The Holocaust was caused by people's evil, and therefore where were people in the Holocaust is the question, not where was God in the Holocaust, because God doesn't intervene in combating other people's free choice. Or do we not say that? So that's a very interesting question in and of itself, and there are sources in either direction. Anyway, where does that leave us? That leaves us, I'm afraid, with a lot of uncertainty. Under what circumstances are you going to program your car? It seems that the only thing that I've said for sure tonight, the only thing for sure is you can't program it to kill less people to save more people. That doesn't work. You can program it to kill yourself rather than to kill other people, but not necessarily to kill other passengers in the car with you. Beyond that, I'm afraid you're going to have to ask a shaila as to what kind of setting you want in your driverless car. But this is not a flippant or theoretical discussion. This is a very, very real discussion. And the question is, are we going to do better doing it this way than just leaving it to people's kind of instincts when this happens? Because presumably we'll get to a better answer when we've sat and thought it through, as opposed to when we just kind of react on the road and do whatever comes first to our minds, which is often going to be just not necessarily the right thing to do. I don't know, what do you feel? Let me ask your opinion. Based on what we've been discussing and based on your thoughts on it previously, what do you think should be the appropriate way to program the vehicle? Who should die and who should live? Tell me what you think. Anyone? Anyone thought this through? Anyone got a car on order?
You you are prime importance to yourself. You have a prime responsibility to your own well-being
Yes.
in some ways before other people's. And therefore, because you could say that the you has been has had your neshama entrusted to you by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you have to give that priority. And therefore,
But you also have an obligation to try and save other people's lives as well. You're right. You have an obligation to yourself, but you have an obligation to others.
But you can't save others if you're not you, being you, doing the saving.
But maybe this was the thing you were put on this planet for, is to save all those people in this moment of crisis. And that's what your purpose in life is. Mr. Lipman, your hand up.
On the basis that the technology is going to be extremely sophisticated, it will know how many passengers, if any, are in the car. So you program it so that if there are no passengers, you sacrifice yourself. But if there are passengers, then you apply the principles that Chazon Ish applied, and you apply the utilitarian solution of causing the least possible harm.
Right, and in that sense, what you will do is you will
take out one person rather than
the
passengers.
One person rather than multiple, on the basis it's an act of saving, or rather than doing nothing at all.
Correct.
Right. Okay, Mr. Weiss.
I would go agree to a certain extent with Ian, but there's one thing that you've not mentioned at all, and that is the current situation when we don't have driverless cars. So when we don't have driverless cars, there is a reasonable chance that something will happen. Your brakes might fail. You've had a long day and you doze off. So if driverless cars, there is a risk that there might be accidents, but the proportion of risks is much, much smaller.
Definitely.
And programmed, whereas the current situation is fairly random.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right.
Because what I'm saying is, isn't it better?
You're 100% right. There's no question that we'll save far more people with driverless cars than we do right now. 100%.
So what I'm saying is, if there is a choice, because what you're saying is, what do we do with the driverless car? But what I'm saying is, if there is a choice of, we don't allow driverless cars because of the ethical, philosophical problems, and we can't overcome those, and we can't agree halakhically. So halakhically, you're not allowed to have a driverless car because the way it's programmed. Or should we say, this is going to save a lot more lives, and therefore we must switch to driverless cars as quickly as possible, even though there are still halakhic problems. So
Right. I want to. That's a very good point. I want to make it absolutely clear. I never suggested at any stage that we should not have driverless cars. I agree with you 100%. We must have driverless cars as soon as we can, because we will save hundreds more lives. Because what we do at the moment is usually the wrong thing. The question, though, is, given that we really have to have driverless cars, we have to face square on this ethical question, resolve it. That's the problem. So actually, it's kind of easier not to have the cars because we don't have to make the choice, but it's the wrong thing because we need to save the lives. And therefore, I agree with you 100%. I would never suggest not to have a car. But the question is, if you have a preference as to how it's programmed, maybe they'll give you a choice. They'll say you have option A, option B, option C, or option D. And you're going to have to wait when you fill in your leasing for your car, financing, you'll write down what kind of car you want. That's what we're going to have to do. Yes, Mrs. Ansell.
It's a slight variation because it's not necessarily, I'm asking about the driverless car, but I'm asking, you're talking about saving, not saving one person's life for another. But when you've got parents and children, it's very unlikely that a parent's actually, their first thing is to protect their child, and they would probably say their child is part of them. So I'm just wondering about that.
That's very interesting, isn't it? That is very interesting. Is that an intellectual or an emotional feeling? Meaning, is there a rationale behind that, or is that just part of the natural instincts of the person?
I think it's both. You do. physically protect your child, even at later stages.
So what if your
It's
child,
definitely emotional as well.
100%, what if your child was on that plane that you were about to shoot down in order to save 1,000 people that it was going to crash into? So in that situation, clearly you'd want to try and protect your child. Although in that situation, everyone's going to die, the child's going to die anyway. But a better scenario, your child's living in the small town and you're diverting the plane into the small town or allowing it to fly into the big town. So you could save thousands of lives, but you, in so doing, sacrifice the life of your child in the process. Now, obviously, that's like an awful choice to make. But I would have thought that logically, if you decided that it was right to fly into the small town, the fact that your child is there shouldn't make any logical difference.
Isn't that the movie Sophie's Choice, in a way?
I never saw the movie. What was the movie?
Where basically, during the Holocaust, a mother was forced to choose which child was going to die.
Right.
It's actually a book to start with.
Yes.
Right.
But essentially, people do have to make choices over who should live, who should die.
Yes, they often do.
And we often do. And it isn't just as simple as saying, okay, I'm not going to make a choice. I'm going to let the plane fly regardless without doing anything. Because could you live with yourself after that? Let's make a scenario. You have a choice as the pilot of having the plane. There's one parachute on the plane. You have a choice as the pilot of having it going into the big town or the little town. And there's a finite chance that people on the plane will survive, including you. There is also a death penalty. So if you fly into the big town and you did nothing, then you will go to court and you will be sentenced to death. If, on the other hand, you divert the plane, you will be viewed as a hero and promoted and given a reward. Then what? Because you have the issue of the court and what the court would decide.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can introduce any number of variables into this. I think I disagree with your first point, which is I think that not making a choice is itself a choice. And that's a valid choice, potentially. You could turn around and say, given that there is no correct answer here, and each one has evils, and I didn't start this in the first place, then not intervening is maybe the right way to go, and then I am not involved in precipitating one or the other. So I think no choice is also a choice, and maybe a legitimate choice. Just maybe one question more, and we'll let you guys people enjoy the sunshine.
That's the fat man. Deciding.
Well, we're just gonna. I think time is a little bit running away from us. Go on, Ian. Finish it off, Ian.
Ian finishes up.
Okay, I think where we're going to get to is that you will not actually get choices, but that there will be some, in effect, government commission of or international commission of wise people, like the HFEA was originally set up, that will decide. And the question will actually be, I think, whether, given the algorithm that is selected and the choices that are made, if they are not in accordance with what the halachic view would be, whether people will be able to use driverless cars.
That's a good point. Yeah, well, we'll see. Ask your local Orthodox driverless rabbi. Okay, fine. Next week we're going to look at something a little bit more straightforward, but actually more practical, which is downloading music illegally and VPNs and all sorts of stuff like that. And therefore we'll see that that's with us right now rather than in the future. So we'll see that next week.